So in today's episode, we are going to have Dr. Tracy Gapin. He's an MD. He's a leading men's health optimization and longevity expert. He's the founder of the Gapin Institute for Precision Medicine and a board-certified urologist with over 25 years of experience. Dr. Tracy helps high-performance entrepreneurs, athletes, and executives reach peak performance through cutting-edge, data-driven, and different types of health strategies. He's a best-selling author, a TEDx speaker, and a trusted by professionals to optimize their health and energy. We're really excited for you to see this episode. Dr. Tracy adds some really great insights, not only into men's health, but also longevity, the importance of the gut microbiome and hormones, and really understanding what's happening and using that data to inform treatment decisions. I really hope you enjoy this episode. Let's jump in. So we're really excited to welcome Dr. Tracy to our show today. And we're going to talk a little bit about peak performance and longevity with a little bit of focus on men's health as well. So to start the ball rolling, I guess, let's start with exactly how do you define peak performance, or how does that differ from being just healthy?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to start. So, I come from the traditional medical world. I was a board certified urologist for over 20 years. And whenever we would hear the phrase peak performance, that instantly, had the connotation of the Olympics or an Ironman triathlon or, the Spartan races or, physical performance specifically. And now what we realize is that there's a lot more to it than that. So to me, if I would define peak performance, it would simply be, how do you get your mind and body to function at the highest level? That could be running a business. That could be you're the founder, you're the business owner, and you're leading a team of employees. It could be that you're a speaker. It could be that you're a doctor and you're saving lives every day. It could be that you are a dad. To me, when I think of peak performance, it's how do I show up and be the most present and engaged, badass dad that I can be after a long, busy day grinding and working and treating patients and leading a team and speaking on amazing podcasts like yours here and doing all this other work that I'm doing. How can I show up and be the best version of myself in every area of my life? And so to me, peak performance is really performing at the high level in every area of your life. And yeah, physical is part of it, but that's just one small piece of the whole picture.
And you mentioned the being a board certified urologist, which is a very, very specific field. And thank goodness for people like you. But what made you make the shift into this, sort of more functional, integrative space? Yeah. Was it a realization that you had limitations there, or was it your own, drive to optimize your own performance? And as you learned that, you decided, hey, man, I need to start applying this more broadly.
Yes and yes. Yeah. So I was about halfway through my urology career now in hindsight. And at the time I was fat. I was 30 pounds overweight. I was stressed out. I was exhausted every day. I was not able to think clearly. I was an angry person. I walk in the hospital, I'm an asshole. They talk about how surgeons are assholes. It's true. We are, because we hate our life. We're miserable and had no control over how to practice medicine. Wasn't feeling like I was really even having an impact. I was just going through the motions every day, grinding and treating cancers and doing big things. But I felt like I was meant for something bigger. And I went to see a doctor myself when I realized I needed some help. And his only answer was to just put me on a statin, tell me to lose weight. I need to take a statin. And I knew that I need a lot of help. And I know it's more to it than just that. And so that got me studying, and I went back to school, and I ended up spending almost 10 years going back to school, learning functional medicine and hormone optimization and epigenetics, which is really the science of how your lifestyle and behavior and environment affects the way your mind and body works, and studying longevity science and studying peptides and wearable technology and all this cool stuff that was very different than the medical world that I was trained in. And this was really an eye-opening experience for me. First of all, to be very vulnerable on the other side of that doctor-patient experience, but also to suddenly become face to face that our healthcare system is broken. It's failing. It's based on treating disease and treating problems and illness, and it's passive, and it's, dangerously reactive, and it's based around pharmaceuticals. And as a doctor, having gone through medical school, hundreds of years ago now, I realize now in hindsight that we're just brainwashed. It's diagnosis drug. With this problem, you use this drug, and that's all it is. And so I suddenly found my passion. I found like shit, this is what I want to do. This is for real, like not just to transform my own health, but really to change the way we approach men's health specifically. And it applies to everything we do applies to women, but men are from Mars. We're different creatures for sure. And
really
so
and I think you had mentioned in the outset as well, like a big part of peak performance. And I appreciated that connection to the mindset part. And then you also talked about your own path of finding your passion, and you just light up when you talk about that. How much do you think that plays into this peak performance, longevity, quality of life aspect? And what are you doing at Gapin Institute to help people in identifying that, working on that part of the peak performance triangle, so to speak?
Such a big part of it. The mindset piece is where we start. Because I use the term momentum. Actually, I'm working on my next book, and the title is Momentum for that reason, in that everything we do has to start somewhere. And so many men, high achieving leaders, founders, entrepreneurs, executive, retired athlete, you name it. It's like, where do I start? There's a sense of overwhelm. There's so much to do. There's noise out there on Twitter and IG and Reddit and you name it, with influencers telling you what you should do, shoulding all over you. And it gets to be so much that you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And it becomes paralysis by analysis, and you do nothing and you don't know where to start. And so the mindset piece is so important. I'm glad you bring this up, of how do you, first of all, recognize how stress is killing us. Stress is, you guys are so focused on microbiome and gut health and stuff. Stress is directly crushing the gut. It's crushing our hormones, neurotransmitters. It's causing inflammation. It's slowing metabolism. It's making us store fat. It breaks down, catabolic effect on muscle, destroys sleep quality. All of these incredibly negative consequences from the stress piece. And if we recognize that you can't eliminate stress. You'll never avoid stresses everywhere. It's how do you frame it? How do you position yourself to handle it better? And that's just all behavioral, lifestyle, mindset pieces that are so important. And we can talk all about the fun peptides and hormones and biohacks and this and that, but it starts with this basic fundamental. How do you approach the mindset piece? So I'm glad you brought that up.
And so when you're meeting with patients and talking to them, what do you think, or what are you seeing that are kind of the top physiological or lifestyle bottlenecks that are holding people back from really performing at their best? Or what are the things that, I know, mindset is a big one, or knowing where to start, but what do you see most regularly that seems to be the bottleneck that is kind of keeping people from that next jump?
I'm going to give you an answer you probably weren't expecting. It's lack of awareness. Mm-hmm. It's so many guys say, I'm fine, I'm good. Yeah, I'm healthy. And I whenever I give talks, I like to ask the audience, hey, are you healthy? Raise your hand if you think you're healthy, and why? Why do you think you're healthy? And people are like, yeah, I'm healthy because I insert some nonsense, irrelevant, insignificant answer here. It's lack of recognition, awareness, understanding of what's going on under the surface, whether it's chronically elevated cortisol levels from stress, whether it's blood sugar imbalance, whether it's hormone deficiencies, nutrient issues, toxins, heavy metals, gut issues, microbiome. Almost every guy I see has major gut issues, and they have no idea because it doesn't necessarily cause irritable bowel symptoms, diarrhea, constipation, cramping. They may have no symptoms, but major source of inflammation. And so I talk a lot about finding your blind spots, and you think you're fine, but you're not. And so I think the biggest bottleneck is right here between the ears of being willing to open your mind to testing and find out, am I really as healthy as I think I am?
Yeah, it's funny because our version of that in our world is, what's your, do you have healthy digestion? Or, people answer that question, and then they say, okay, how often are you having a bowel movement? Some people say, 2-3 times a week, and actually thinking that is what healthy is. And so I think it's really interesting to actually create as you point out, like the awareness of what healthy actually looks like. So a lot of people don't know what that means. Just because I'm not on medications, I'm healthy, or just because, I sleep 5 hours means I'm healthy. So I love that. That awareness piece is key, especially in that, as you pointed out, it's a noisy world. And so I think it's, analysis paralysis is very common because there's a lot of people talking and then it overwhelms and now people are not taking action.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is like putting the cart before the horse as well, where there's all this talk on the sexy stuff. I call it like the frosting on your cake. And it's like the, peptide. I love peptides, don't get me wrong, but that's the frosting on the cake. The hyperbarics and the plasmapheresis and even stem cells and red light sauna, cryo, PEMF, all these cool biohacking tools and apple cider vinegar and all this shit people talk about. Don't get me wrong. They're great. But the cake is made of gut health, nutrition, hormones, sleep, stress management, nutrient levels, etc. That's the foundational stuff that people lose sight of because all the sexy stuff people are talking about online. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have as many bells and whistles as the cool stuff. And I think it gets lost.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And so when you're looking, like you talked about like diagnostics. So the first step is becoming aware.
Yeah.
What do you think are kind of, I guess, the best things to do or become aware of in terms of testing to create that awareness so you know what the steps to do are?
Yeah. So I love initial blood testing because blood lab testing will give you just some basic fundamental areas of focus. And I think of it as 5 categories. So and listeners, I think of cardiovascular health. I think of hormones. I think of inflammation, blood sugar control, and nutrient levels. And briefly, cardiovascular health is not the LDL, HDL cholesterol that your doctor is looking at. Those don't matter. It's the ApoB and the LP little a in parentheses, lowercase a. It's the particle count, the LDL particle count, which is LDL-P, way more important than LDL-C. Inflammation. Out of order, but that's fine. Inflammation, CRP, really important one. LPPLA2 and ferritin. These are great markers looking at inflammation. So often guys feel fine and they have high inflammatory markers. Why? Well, then you need to start diving deeper, and we know where that always ends up leading us, right? All roads somehow end up leading to the gut. But that marker helps put their antenna up. Like, wait, why the hell is my CRP 3? It should be less than 0.5. Why is my ferritin 280? Double what it should be. Like, these are markers to just simply bring awareness to something's not right. You're not doing the right thing. Hormones, doctors are looking at total testosterone, which is the wrong lab. You need to be looking at free testosterone, and they're using antiquated, old, ridiculous ranges that aren't really appropriate. We want to be looking optimized, not just air quote normal. So free testosterone, free T3 thyroid hormone, reverse T3. This is a big one that most people don't ever think about. Reverse T3, which is I call it the evil twin brother of T3. This is the thyroid hormone that we care about as T3. It gets blocked by reverse T3. Why is it elevated? You got to look for sources of inflammation and stress and nutrient deficiencies and toxins, underlying stuff that's causing this. Guys are having issues with energy and brain fog and fatigue and can't build muscle. It's these markers that are going to tell you why. So that's cardiovascular health and inflammation and hormones. The next one is blood sugar control. Look at things like fasting insulin, hemoglobin A1C, even uric acid levels are great markers of blood sugar, metabolic health. A lot of guys think they're doing great and their blood sugars are through the roof. Why? Well, you got to look at the underlying sources of stress. And it could be psychological stress or it could be stress from inside our body. Again, leads us back to the gut. And then finally, nutrient. Things like homocysteine and magnesium, B complex vitamins, folate, all these are the key micronutrients that your body needs to function properly. So in summary, all these markers, I think, are great ways of just getting people to wake up and realize, holy cow, maybe I'm not as healthy as I think I am.
And then looking for the next step. Basically, that's the awareness, that's the light bulb moment. And then what do you do next?
Exactly.
And it's amazing to see the influence that labs can have on helping people to create change. They can be even physical pain, mental pain, whatever the thing is. But there's something magical about seeing numbers, especially people that are, oriented to being higher performers. They go, wait a minute, I'm overperforming or I'm high performing, say in my financial capacity or whatever the thing is, but I'm actually underperforming when it comes to my physiology, and my testosterone is lower, or my, inflammation is elevated, or what have you. And it's, just having a clinical background as well. It's interesting to see when people see those, it's like, wow, now you're motivated to make change. You were feeling like crap before, but it took a blood test or some other, measurements to actually create the motivation for change. And I think it's a great part of medicine, being able to actually track the change over time, so what you're doing is working. And I'm curious as well how you're incorporating some of the wearable technology into this, because I'm a fan of some of the wearable technologies as well. And I'm just curious how you sort of combine both of those pieces. Like you have the actual lab testing, the different tests you're doing, but you're incorporating the wearables. And I'm curious how those two merge together to create better outcomes.
Yeah. So to give kind of the framework that I think we'll position it properly for the listener is my peak launch system that I developed has 4 D's to it. The first D is diagnostics, and that's the blood labs I talked about. Step 2 is the deep dive. So why? Why are my markers off? Why are my hormones off? Why do I have inflammation, blood sugar? Why? And also, how do I fix it? So the deep dive are things like microbiome testing, cortisol testing, food sensitivities, genetics, body imaging like calcium score or a heart scan or full body MRI, VO2 max, metabolic rate testing. All these deeper dive tests help us now understand, okay, what do we do now? How do I fix it? Step 3 is the design, which is now how do we design your plan, your blueprint of what the heck do we do? What hormones do you need? What supplements? What lifestyle? What do I eat? Guys always say, just tell me what to do. That's where we actually give you real clear, eat this, not that, eat this many calories, this many macros. This is what you can do for targeted supplementation and sleep protocols, etc. Step 4 is the data. So what you're asking is now, how do we use wearable technology? I love to use wearable technology to track if what we're doing is actually working or not. So
instant
feedback. Yeah. It's like, so think about this, like people are online spouting, you need to be doing this diet, that diet, you need to be doing this workout, take this supplement, all this, people are again shooting all over you. How do you know that's right for you? How do you know it's actually working? Unless you're tracking metrics, KPIs, key performance indicators to know, you have no idea. And so this is where I love wearables like blood sugar tracking, like a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, massively valuable for any high performer to understand how well are you controlling blood sugar. And if not, why, what's happening? I found one client, it was a woman, she couldn't lose weight. And I tried everything, nothing works. Put a blood sugar monitor on her. She's eating sushi that's making her blood sugar go over 200 for 3 hours at a time. Like for her, sushi's kryptonite.
Right. Yeah. And you would never know that. I found really shocking as well is like there's the obvious ones, right? Like you're drinking a Coke or anything that's like really high calorie, condensed. But people will actually spike to things that wouldn't otherwise be obvious.
Right.
Sushi's got a lot of white rice, so that one may be somewhat more obvious.
Yeah.
But there are foods that aren't really, high glycemic index that some people individually are spiking really high on.
Exactly.
And if it weren't for that continuous monitoring, you would never know. And
You're
so
exactly
I think
right.
that's a cool way of incorporating stuff like that. It really gives people the power. And I think, that's from what you're describing, it sort of seems like you're giving back compared to your old days of, like, here's the drug, go off, do this, or I'm going to cut you open, do the surgery and see you later. I think, from what you're describing in this trajectory and arc of your career, it's like you're almost just giving all of the power over to the patient and allowing them to make these very informed decisions. And I think that's how you create long-lasting change, right? Is tell me what to do, but actually show me that it's working. Yeah. And the combination of testing with the blood and actually real live feedback on some of this wearable stuff is really encouraging, right? It gives people the direct feedback that either they're on the right track or they're way off. And that, having you as a guide, your team is, obviously the powerful part there.
And it's personalized, right? Like we're seeing the side of personalized medicine, and why that's so important is looking at each person individually, because all of these factors play together, but everyone is different. So being able to get that feedback in, we've looked at your tests and this is what we think is the best. Now let's make sure that your body is going to respond the way that we're thinking it will. And I think the system allows for the best feedback and then be able to kind of pivot if it's not if people aren't responding the way that, because sometimes tests say one thing and then you do it and you go, well, all of your pieces together are kind of acting differently than we thought. And being able to kind of pivot for that person, I think is invaluable. It actually allows them to kind of achieve that next level.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's much more dynamic now, where you can see real time and track outcome data. And what I'm really excited about is we're working behind the scenes. We have an app that is already live, but we're adding AI driven protocols that will real time read your wearable data that's coming in and real time give you feedback based on that data. So you're not waiting until your next doctor visit in 6 months from now, or even your coaching visit in 2 weeks from now. It's telling you right now what your data is showing you. Like a great example, the other thing we track a lot is stress. So you actually measure stress, heart rate variability. HRV is a great way to measure stress. And the best way to do it is really a single time, a snapshot in time every day at the exact same time, same setting. So for example, I wake up at 6 every morning. I sit on the couch with my cup of coffee and I'm doing my Morpheus chest strap scan, 2.5 minutes to get my HRV. What I find with clients is when you track HRV like that over time, you can see real changes and understand how your behavior is affecting your internal stress levels. Great example. I have a lot of wealth advisors who have social networking events. You know, they have cocktail hours and they drink, 5 nights a week, and they don't think that it affects them. Pretty powerful when you can actually see the data, how you can see your HRV is 50, 52, 51, 53, 40. Holy crap, what happened? I drank. So it's like you can see real-time data. You can see your sleep quality crush. You can see your HRV crush. You can see your blood sugar elevated, all from things like, cocktails the night before. And it makes it so much easier to empower men and women to make real change when they can see the data and see how it's affecting them for real every day.
And I think, do you find, I guess, by providing people with that, so not only the guidance of what they should be doing, but also showing them what their lifestyle choices, which is a big part, I think, that sometimes is underappreciated, especially when you're looking at longevity and peak performances. What are you choosing to do that impacts your health? Do you find that as you kind of lean more into giving people this data and showing them what's happening, are you getting better responses? Are people getting more aha moments and making changes because it's not just their perception of these choices, but actual kind of external information that's not just like, oh, that doesn't bother me. Oh, I'm totally fine when I do this.
Yeah.
It's showing them the data, getting them kind of over that hump of making those changes and then seeing the benefits.
Yeah, definitely. It's gamifying it in a way. It's giving them data that they can track, and they're trying to improve it. How do I get my HRV up just a couple points and work on that? How can I get my blood sugar lower when I wake up in the morning? And how could I, improve body composite, lean muscle mass metrics and stuff like, and I have a guy he's now at like 7.8% body fat. And I swear he sends me a screenshot every month of his scans. But it's great. It's like he's gamifying it. He's like competing with himself. And that's when you get to see some real change when it becomes fun.
Have you cracked the code to make healthcare fun? Have you figured out the way that everyone's now like, I got to do better because I want to be better than, they're playing an own game with themselves, but it gives them ownership, but also that feedback allows them to kind of get small benefits to keep themselves going.
It's like micro wins. Again, it comes back to the concept of momentum. If I can get just 1% better every day, just get 1% better today. That's all you got to do. And that's what it's all about. And it builds up momentum, and it builds upon itself, and you're laying one brick at a time, and you step back, holy cow, look at what I've accomplished. Yeah.
Well, that's the beautiful thing as well about data, right? I don't know if you have experienced this as well with patients. I'm sure you have, given, your 100+ year career. But oftentimes people forget, they literally forget where they've come from. And I think it's like a human evolutionary thing, right? Like if we remembered how shitty our life was in the past or how bad the symptoms were, like we'd probably just be depressed all the time. But I've seen that people just totally forgot. And without appropriate data collection, whether it's labs, whether it's some of this wearable stuff, you're just missing the boat when it comes to actually, what I'm doing is working. It is having an impact. And again, I think that's the key, right? Is like, we can empower people to make a change for a short amount of time, but how do you get this to become an actual lifestyle? Like, it's not something that, I need to go to the gym or I need to eat well. It's like, this is how I live. And I think that's the the real transition that allows people to make long-term, changes to their lives. I don't know how you see that in real life.
Yeah, this ties back nicely, doesn't it, Jason, to the mindset piece where you're not just changing behaviors, you're changing identity. And this goes back to a lot of, Ben Hardy. I love his writing. He's an organizational psychologist. He's wrote, Gap in the Gain, 10X is easier than 2X, Who Not How. And he talks about your future. One of his books is talk about your future self, about how you have to decide who you want to be and what does that new identity do? How do they live? And so you're not just changing behaviors, you're changing who you are, knowing that this new person I'm becoming, this is how they live. And so it's a different perspective where it's suddenly not task oriented. It's not like a chore. It's not like you're not dieting. You're not like on a short-term program. It's changing who you are. And that's where you see a real change. I have this, you reminded me, you were telling earlier about how you don't realize the changes that you've made, how far you've come. I have a couple from Colorado who visit us they take a big trip and they visit us down here in Florida once a year. We work with them throughout the year, obviously, but they come in person and they visit us and we do body comp scans and fitness scans, all this kind of fun stuff while they're in the office. And not this year, but last year, Rodney was complaining. He's like, yeah, I'm just starting to not see any results anymore. And I'm like, well, what have you been doing? He's like, well, yeah, I've honestly, I haven't been that good. I haven't been working out for a while. And, we've been traveling for the last few months. I've been drinking a lot and eating like crap, all these kind of bad things that he knows he shouldn't be doing. We look at the data. He's actually still improved from the previous visit. So it's like after all that shitty stuff you're doing and not following the product, not doing what you're supposed to be doing anyway, you're still seeing great results, but it's all here. It's the perception of it. And so that's where the data didn't lie and help me to show Rodney, dude, look how well you're doing. Get back on that. Just what's most important is today.
Right. And I think that's the key, right? Like as you described the 4 Ds of the program, like the key is that you're laying a real strong foundation so that your body can become more adaptable to stressors, to changes in dietary things or lack of sleep or busy travel schedules or all of those things. And the comparison in, our microbiome world is like the goal shouldn't be that you have to live on a restrictive diet all the time. Like that's not a win. The goal should be that your body actually has the ability to go under some pressures and come out fine, whether it's stress or whether there's things going on. Yeah. Like if your quality of life or your like version of being healthy is totally restricting yourself to have no fun, no social life, like bed at 9 every night in order for you to feel well, whatever that version might be, like that's just not ideal, right? You should have enough sort of elasticity, if you will, in your health to be able to tolerate the things that life throws at you. And I think that's the cool part of, what you described in that scenario is like with some of those foundational pieces in place, right, someone can still go, off the rails, so to speak, and be fine, and probably be able to bounce back much quicker.
Yeah, I love the elasticity. I love that concept, and I agree. It's all about balance in my mind. How if it's torture, eventually you're going to say, "Screw this! I can't." It's not sustainable long term. Again, it's an identity change, not a short term program. And a great example of that is yesterday. It was a birthday for one of my staff members, my client concierge Rachel. It was her birthday yesterday. They made birthday cake. I'm going to have a small little piece of birthday cake. Like it's my rule. It's someone's birthday. It's almost like a dishonor if I don't have a piece of their birthday cake, So I had a couple bites of it. I don't eat sugar normally. I don't eat desserts typically or hardly ever. But I'm going to every now and then splurge like that. I'm going to enjoy the moment and live. And, there's still social situations that come up where you have to live a little bit. And if you have done everything right up until then, you can have that brief escape and be okay and be able to just get right back on it. What happens a lot of times is people go on a cruise for a week and they indulge every meal and they're destroying their body. They come back and they don't even know how to start again. So they're like, screw it. I don't even know where I blew it. I've gained 5 pounds. It's over. And they just plummet back to where they were instead of just getting right back on there, build momentum again, one day at a time, 1% a day again. That's where people get lost is when they they think it's either black or white.
And that's part of the mental aspect again. And I think it's, your viewpoint on success and viewpoint on when you fall off the wagon, that the difference between kind of being able to get up and go see where you were and know that you can get back there versus being like hands up and give up. And I think that's a big part of making the choice. And I think that's part of, being aware of and wanting to reach your peak or what's your heightened. You have to have the mindset of not every day is going to be a win. That's the reality of life. But that even trying is part of winning, right? Like keeping that going and being willing to do it again. And I think that's something that people, especially if you're at a point in your healthcare journey where you're like, there's nothing, I can't do anything or nothing's working, being aware of the fact that you're even thinking about it and wanting to figure out what that next step is the right step or you're in the right direction. And I think people want results yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think by getting feedback regularly and having an outlined plan, or at least a goal to where you're going, can really help people kind of keep the ball going in the right direction, because at least they know that there is another step. And I think sometimes in healthcare, and especially I see a shift in men's healthcare, because I think for a long time, while we study men more, I think there wasn't a really good focus on needing to have healthcare and be aware of your health every day in the general kind of social demeanor for men. And we're seeing a shift in that. People are talking about it. People are aware of the fact that they need to be healthy, or at least go to the doctor and get checked in, because we know that for a very long time, men went to doctors less, and things that were preventable weren't. That's just kind of, health history. But we're seeing a change in that. And I think part of that is people are talking about it more, but also people are willing to, I think, simplify it and lay it out as a plan. Because I think sometimes it can feel very mystic. You're like, I don't know what to do. There's so many choices. There's so much stuff. What's the right thing? What's the wrong thing? And if you do the wrong thing a couple of times, sometimes you get unmotivated. So I think I like the idea of like laying these things out. And I think from your perspective, what do you think is most overlooked in men's wellness? And then how are you guys addressing that so that they kind of can get on that path and kind of see what the next step is?
Yeah, there's definitely a shift in awareness around men's health. Up until now, it's always been this concept of if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. And, men don't want to ask for directions or help. I'll figure it out on my own. I'll wait till it's falling off before I seek help kind of thing. Yeah. But the one thing that'll get guys' attention, that'll make them actually finally go see a doctor, of course, when suddenly sex changes, when sex isn't like it was, now let's go see a doctor. And so,
although they made it a whole lot easier now. I see these ads. I don't know if it's I'm just reaching a certain age, but all this Cialis and all these ads. It used to be actually to go into your doctor to get a prescription, and now it's it's all online. So they're removing the need to actually have a conversation about it. But
they actually targeted you based on your search history, Jason.
Oh, damn. Maybe I got to come see you over in Florida.
But it's true. It's a good red flag, I think, for
there you go. It is. Yeah, it's a sign of much bigger problems, but at least it finally gets their attention. Exactly right. Yeah. But back to answer your question in all seriousness, I feel like one of the biggest things that guys don't appreciate is the value of sleep. The incredible value of a good night sleep, not just quantity. I went to bed 11, woke up at 6, slept 7 hours. I'm fine. Leave me alone, doc. Are you getting a good restorative sleep? Is it consistent, same time every night? You going to bed at the exact same time, waking up at the same time? And are you getting the good restorative quality sleep? And typically the only way to know that is to track it. So, whether I wear my Aura, but there are other options out there as well, obviously. But you want to be tracking your sleep, being aware of your sleep. And this comes back to, again, the wearable conversation we had a few minutes ago of when you see the data, it doesn't lie. I'll have guys that come in and they'll say I have 7.5 hours of sleep. And one guy, I have a great slide of this where he slept 7 hours and 11 minutes, but yet he had 9 minutes of deep sleep that night. 9 minutes. You're supposed to have at least an hour or 60 minutes of deep sleep every night. And he had 9 minutes, even though he slept 7 hours, 11 minutes. Great example of how, you think you're fine, but you're not. A lot of guys will sacrifice their sleep. I hear guys, I sleep 5.5 hours every night because I'm grinding. I'm working until midnight. I'm up at 5:30 to get to the gym, and I'm going. And then when I get home, kids go to sleep, spend time with my wife. I got to work some more. And you can't sustain that. You're putting a massive stress on your system that, again, you don't recognize the effect that stress is having. And so for a lot of guys, I think it's getting them to recognize the value and the power, the restorative repair aspect of good sleep.
Yeah. And I think that's probably such a balance to achieve, right? Like I noticed that, for example, with guys that I train with at the gym, and it's like sometimes they're like 6-7 days a week, they're training and hard training. And yeah, they look good, but I'm always questioning like, well, what would a little bit of balance look like for you, right? Because they're not appreciating what the impact of that stress is. Even if you enjoy going to the gym, the physiological stress that puts you under, the inflammation that you're causing as a part of it. And then those same guys, will have periods where they're just like huffing down coffee and taking caffeine pills and like all the other stuff to push them through, not recognizing that, man, if you just took 1-2 days off once in a while and did something restorative, you'd actually be able to get yourself further faster. And so I'm curious how, again, I'm making an assumption, but oftentimes people who are seeking that more peak performance are pushing really hard, as you described. They're working hard, they're sleeping less, they're doing more of the gym, or they're competitive in a sport or something like that. How are you helping to sort of get them to appreciate the importance of that balance? And what are the things that you're suggesting for them to do that are more restorative?
Yeah. Key word there is balance. I love the question. So my PA, great example here. Sean's my PA, and he's been with me for a couple of years now, and big dude, very muscular built. He's in the gym, like you're saying, every 7 days a week. And he was doing, 2-a-days with his wife for a while for some challenges here or there. And, we did blood work on him, and blood work actually looked pretty decent. Hormones were, testosterone a little low, but otherwise nothing too bad. We did VO2 max testing on him, fitness testing. It was terrible, awful. That prompted us to do some cardiovascular testing, and he had massive heart disease. He had a calcium score, calcified, hard, mature, long-standing plaque that you see on a calcium score. Should be 0. He was 36 years old when we scanned him. It wasn't 0. It was 212. Wow. He had massive internal stress. We measured that as well. And it was all coming from overtraining. And it's such a common problem that guys don't realize how they think more is better, but it's not the case at all. It comes back to, like you said, it's the balance that's so important. And I'll go back to, I'm not a big, huge built guy. So when I say this, guys like, but take it for what it's worth. You don't build muscle in the gym, right? You're actually technically tearing down muscle in the gym so that exactly when you repair and rebuild and recover, you build, muscle hypertrophy. And that happens typically when you're sleeping. And this is why so many guys, like, they're crushing in the gym, but yet they're not seeing any gains. Well, yeah, because you're sleeping 5 hours a night. When is this muscle going to grow? When's it going to build? Like, when are you going to repair you're not creating that balance like you're talking about. And so a very common stressor to our system is that overtraining, and too much of a good thing is not necessarily better.
Yeah. And sleep goes in, and so, cognition, brain fog, all of these things. If you're pushing yourself too far and you're not recovering and you're not giving your body time, there are other symptoms that are going to come along with that. And so I think it's really important to say that, because I think we think going to the gym more, pushing yourself harder, that's the right way to go. And we forget that our body is a system, and there was a reason we sleep. If we didn't need to sleep, we would have cut that out a long time ago. Right. That's a lot of hours you could optimize, right? So I think that's part of it. We need to sleep. Yeah. And even some of it's simple, like sleeping when it's dark versus when it is light. You get something different. We know, having shifted schedules, or, people that work on shift work, there's so many negative things that are solely tied to just having that shifted sleep schedule. Mm-hmm. And that comes into playing with stress, because your body can recover from stress when you are sleeping. Yeah. And if you want to think better and be clear, well, your brain has to do its work while you're sleeping. So like, each part of your body needs sleep for a different reason. And so I think when you really think about that, like, there's no part of your body that doesn't want you to sleep. Yeah. And you get so many benefits out of something that really is you doing the least amount of work and your body doing a ton of work. And so, it's a good balance. And I think it's definitely something that's overlooked and underappreciated, especially in the go kind of culture we live in, sleep is one of those things that I think a lot of people use it as a chip for themselves. Like, if I get all these things done, tomorrow night, I'll get a good night's sleep. And they go from working or doing something, crazy intense to sleeping. I'm like, if you are able to go from doing something intensely focused or working really hard to sleep, you're crashing, you're not sleeping, because you should need time to wind down to get into a sleep state. So I think that is really indicative too, as well. If you're lying down and just passing out, going from, doing work to passing out, then you're not really sleeping effectively, because you're literally, your body's just turning off. You're not going into sleep the way that you're supposed to. And that's probably where you're getting this 9 minutes of deep sleep out of 7 hours of being in bed. You're like, you're not going into sleep, you're crashing into it. And those are very different things. The quality of sleep is so important. And the other thing you've mentioned a lot, which I find interesting to hear in terms of men's health, and this may be, I've done a lot of my research years, we're doing different sex differences in exercise and medications and things like that, and how we respond differently. But I feel like, do you feel like there's more information now or more focus in men's hormones? Because I know we talk a lot about women's hormones, but for a very long time, I feel like we didn't appreciate men's hormones and how those change with age.
Sure.
Do you think that people are becoming more aware of it, or do you really think they should be more aware of it, I guess, is the other side?
Yes and yes. Yeah. So there's more awareness around it. But I think the problem has been for so long now, and this has been going on over a decade, is that men are drawn to, give me testosterone, give me the T, give me the shot, and that's all I need. There's this perception, and there's these everywhere you go, there's a T clinic. Like there's like a men's health center is really a disguise for a come get your testosterone shot clinic. And what I believe very strongly is that testosterone is critically important. We need it. There's a testosterone epidemic. Levels are plummeting, and it's promoting, early heart disease, early mortality, tons of downstream consequences. Definitely important hormone. All that being said, we're missing the other 50 that we care about. And so men are drawn to get my testosterone, and then that's all I need. And so what I like to emphasize is there's so much more to it than just testosterone. Yes, you need T, but there's also thyroid, growth hormone, nitric oxide, vitamin D, estrogen, goes on and on. And so, yes, hormones are so important for men, and men still don't even recognize DHEA. Most guys have never heard of this hormone. It's a hormone that you need good gut health to sulfate properly, but DHEA sulfate, the active form, directly counters cortisol. It regulates cortisol to help balance it. We keep talking about balance here. Most guys don't ever test it, don't ever know how important it is, but it's a precursor to testosterone. When you give testosterone replacement therapy, which I think is incredibly valuable for a lot of men, you need to be aware that you're actually directly lowering your DHEA levels even more. And most guys aren't testing it, let alone correcting it.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think it's, it's like all of these things you had mentioned, these cool, flashy things, which I agree are cool and flashy, right? The hyperbarics and the plasmapheresis and the red lights, and it just looks cool. It sounds cool. They look like rocket ships sometimes. But I think people often skip to that when these foundational things are actually what allows those things to even work and or work effectively. And we see that all the time in the context of, obviously we're in the fecal microbiota transplant space, all about the gut microbiome and the importance of that and how that links to every other organ system in your body. But the same is true there as it is for hormones and all the other things. If the foundational pieces are not in place, the basics, the super basics, it's just not going to work very well.
Right.
And, sometimes I think it's really important to slow down to allow yourself to speed up, right? Like, yes, you could jump straight to hyperbarics or saunas or these other things. But if you don't slow down to do the diagnostics, to do the deep dives that you've talked about, you're actually not going to get there, or it's going to take you much longer to get there. And so I think that's such a core piece, and I appreciate you bringing that part up. Like, yeah, it's cool to do testosterone, and that's fun, and it works, and it's amazing. But the reality is, like, if you don't set a real strong foundation, you're just not going to be able to actually get the core benefits from it that you could otherwise. Or maybe you're going to do some negative things to your body, which I've seen happen a lot too, where people they jump straight to those things, but now they're developing ferritin issues or other problems. And so I think it's really key to get those foundational pieces in. And I'm just curious, of course, I mentioned that microbiome piece. Like, what do you see as coming up a lot in this population from a gut health perspective, and how do you find that to be important as it relates to regulating the stress hormones, the sex hormones, and the other pieces? And then what tools typically are you arming people with to help address some of these issues?
Yeah. So what we are now doing on every one of our clients, foundational elements include microbiome testing, specific food sensitivity testing. I emphasize specific because there's a lot of ones out there that are not very accurate, and salivary cortisol hormone testing, because I believe salivary, our stress hormone cortisol is such a big deal as well. In the microbiome testing, I find very consistently massive dysbiosis, which is, for the listeners, really, you probably heard this on your podcast before, but really just imbalance of the, if you will, good bugs, bad bugs. And I hate to I don't want to simplify. It's not that simple, but you have these, healthy microbes that we need, the commensal bacteria that help feed our gut, the L cell that makes GLP-1. You need good Akkermansia. You need all these other good key cornerstone bacteria. And then there's these harmful bacteria that can cause damage and breakdown of our gut wall and cause maldigestion, et cetera. And there's a balance between the two. So dysbiosis is a really major imbalance. A lot of candida, a lot of issues with breakdown of the gut wall. So, leaky gut, quick, easy term that people can think of. It's really breakdown of the integrity of the gut wall that leads to issues with digestion. It leads to food sensitivities. It leads to issues with toxins. And so I'll often find with that massive food sensitivities. Great story. I've told this story a million times, but your listeners probably haven't heard this yet, so I'll say it again. One of my clients was a race car driver, and when he first came to work with me, he was having issues with focus and mental acuity and decision making on the racetrack. He felt like something was off, going 200 miles an hour around the curve, around the turns. It's kind of a big deal. For him, it was all gut issues, and he had food sensitivities to bananas and coffee. Of all things, bananas and coffee were the two that lit up on his testing. And every morning for breakfast with his protein shake, guess what Marco was having? Bananas and coffee. And so, we made that one little tweak, and we were doing some other things as well. But he said within a day or two of doing that, it was like a light switch went on. And so it's these little things that are big things when you find them that can make all the difference in the world. And all of that was stress driven. All of that was, he's going out and he's, doing happy hours and he doesn't sleep and high stress environment and lifestyle. And all of that gradually causes the imbalance on the microbiome, causes the breakdown of the gut wall. And so it's, how do you fix it? It's lifestyle. It's, you got to target supplementation. You got to fix the problem as well. You have to also repair the gut wall. You have to eliminate the food sensitivities that you're dealing with at the time while you're fixing it. But it's also about establishing the healthy habits so that long term this won't recur once you fixed it as well.
Perfect. Yeah. And I think, for us, we see that we talk a lot about the gut being important, but I think it kind of comes up throughout this entire conversation that it's a piece of the puzzle. And I think we need to kind of remember that what fuels our body and what our body uses is all processed in the gut. So it's playing a role somewhere. If you're eating, it's somehow going to impact. And I think thinking about food sensitivities and leaky gut is a really good indicator there, because when the gut becomes dysfunctional, it doesn't do its job anymore. And then it's going to start a domino effect of kind of impacting other things. And so it's definitely a part of the puzzle. And I think something we stress, but I guess if someone was, you're talking about the race car driver, and he said, the brain fog is an issue. And then that started the journey to kind of look at kind of other, issues going on. If someone was trying to decide if kind of going down, trying to optimize their health or go through kind of trying to reach their peak, what's always the first step for them to kind of get that journey started, or the self-evaluation to understand if maybe they're at the right point to do that?
Yeah. So we always start with, initial assessment to understand, where you now, where you want to be, what are your challenges currently, what's working, what's not working. We look at energy, we look at sleep, we look at, body composition. We look at how's your sex life, how's your drive, how's what's your fitness level like. We look at all these aspects on the initial upfront health assessment. And then, what are your goals? Where do you want to be? What's the real outcome you're trying to achieve? And for some guys, that's fat loss. For some guys, it's cognitive function like Marco. Other guys, it's energy. Other guys, it's have sex with my partner. Some women, it's, I think my husband's cheating on me because he has no interest in sex anymore. So sometimes it's real relationship impacts that we're dealing with here. Some of it's, you find a calcium score of 212 when you're 36 years old and you're like, holy cow, what do I got to do here so that I can live, a full life? Then that's when the diagnostics come in. That's where the blood work again helps us kind of fine tune. What do we need to test? The deep dive, doing the functional assessments, like the genetics can help us fine tune. What should I be eating? The GI testing we talked about can help identify problems that we got to correct. All of that put together now, excuse me, helps us construct that plan, that blueprint of what do I do? Just doctor, tell me what to do. And so I think it's very important to be very methodical and systematic in that approach, that if you try to jump to tell me what to do step first, I think you should do the Mediterranean diet or paleo or keto or carnivore or vegan or plant-based. You're just guessing. And so I always say test, don't guess, to know, what you need to be doing. And that's where the individualization comes in.
And then I guess you guys have this kind of systemized, which I love. I love a good system. Very type A, love a good system.
I follow through. I follow through on Colby. Yeah.
Where can someone connect with your work or access your program, or how's the best place to get that information? If they've listened to this and go, yeah, that's me, I need to do that. Yeah. How do they do it? Okay, cool. So where do they connect?
Thank you. So you can check out GapinInstitute.com. That's GAPIN Institute.com. And for the listener, I always like to give away gifts. And so if you go to GapinInstitute.com/launch, as in peak launch, LAUNCH, there's a high performance health handbook, which are 15 strategies and tactics you can start using today to have more energy, focus, and drive. There's an ultimate peptide guide that I constructed with all the latest science around peptides. There's a copy of my best-selling book, Mel 2.0. You can get a digital copy of. There's my TED Talk you can download. There's a Peak Launch Masterclass, a bunch of free goodies in there. So just go to GapinInstitute.com/launch.
Perfect.
That's awesome. And I will say as well that you've got some awesome social media stuff. It must be my search history, but even on LinkedIn, you got some really good stuff.
Awesome.
So
I appreciate it.
I encourage people as well to check out your social media.
Thank you.
Whoever's in the back end cutting and splicing and doing all the marketing stuff is doing a great job. And I think it's awesome that you're bringing your conventional experience, and then you've come to this spot where you are, and you're not just doing it practically, because that often happens, right? You just get busy, and doctors kind of get hunkered in and they're practicing, they're doing medicine. But a big part of getting people to actually start is creating more awareness, and
absolutely.
And so it's really cool to see what you're doing there, and I'm excited to continue to follow your journey as you refine all of this. I mean, you mentioned the incorporation of AI and just the power and the future that medicine has, and how much it's changed in the last 20 years is nothing in comparison to what's going to happen, I believe, in the next 20. And I think given everything that you're doing, you're positioning yourself in such a interesting and important way to really transform the way that medicine's practiced and how we help people, and how much quicker people will actually be able to make these changes. So I appreciate you sharing all your wisdom and knowledge today. And I look forward to continuing to watch your journey.
Oh, thanks so much. This is a true passion project, so appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's absolutely outstanding. We'll put the link in the description as well, so everyone can access it.
Perfect.
And I really appreciate you, answering our questions and giving us your insights and your take on all this. And I love the neuro nerd in me loves that you've kind of hacked how people respond to things and use that in healthcare, and that guidance and feedback is really helps people stay on track. And so it's really cool to see that in practice and not just kind of, on the research side of things.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And have
a conversation.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. And I hope you guys all learned something really interesting today. I've learned at least 5 new things, which is my goal every day. And please check out the link below so you can learn a little bit more. Thanks.